Let's bring in Jay Onrait now this morning. I laugh because I'm thinking of your elephant piano that I saw you playing last week. How you
I've
doing,
got
Jay?
it here somewhere, Rod. I don't know where it is. It's
Jay,
somewhere here. I've got
I'm
other stuff. I've got a dollhouse.
I'm concerned that somebody's running a burner account on Facebook of Jay Onrait because I sent you the video this morning of Chad Kackert talking about you and Dan, and you haven't opened it yet. Are you not much of a Facebook guy?
No.
Clearly. Yeah, only when it comes to baby pics.
I almost never check it, Rod. I'm so sorry. You should just Twitter, my tweeter or something.
Were you aware of Chad Kackert, his comments of you and Dan last week?
No, I wasn't aware of the comments until your producer, Clark, explained them to me. I think that's hilarious. I'm not surprised at all. I mean, it's a pretty stupid thing, us just having so much fun. It's the same as Brock Besser. Like, Brock, when we say Brock Besser, like, he probably can't stand it. But we just love it.
Well, I know. So the thing was, I don't know. I sent you the clip. It's on your Facebook. I said, Chad Kackert, do you have a relationship with Jay and Dan? He's like, who? Like literally. And we hit the floor. But then we never heard back from you guys. I'm like, oh, maybe they don't find it as funny as we do.
Oh, we find it hilarious. Yeah, we don't care. I mean, we care about as much of Chad Kackert's reaction to us as Chad Kackert cares about us.
Exactly. Okay, so anyways, you've been a nice part of my morning routine here, but not this week. What's happening with Jay and Dan? What's happening with TSN programming? Are you off the air? Are you on vacation? What's the deal?
No, we did a show yesterday, so this is all news to me. We should have been on this morning. I don't know what's going on, to be honest. We did a show last night. I'm trying to think. Is there a big sporting event, a curling bonspiel of some sort? Nope, nothing. So I can't think of a reason why we wouldn't have been on. Usually we're on TSN 4 until I think 6 a.m. Saskatchewan time, but then we're on TSN 5 all the way till like noon or something. So I'm not sure. I'll have to talk to programming about that, Rod.
Yeah, please do. Get on it and get back to me, please. What's it been like broadcasting from home? Clearly, I mean, we've all enjoyed seeing you guys in that element. You've been working great together. How has it been to get back on the air after that little pause there?
It's been awesome, Rod. All jokes aside, I mean, you and I are just so lucky to have jobs like this where we can, quickly bring things together, and people smarter than me certainly can help me from a technical perspective over the phone, set up a tripod, audio, all that stuff, just like your producer Clark did in trying to set up this interview. So for me, it's just I'm at the hands of much smarter people than me, as has been the case most of my career. And luckily, we have some great people at TSN who've really set it up nicely for us. And I will say, Rod, the commute can't be beat. I mean, I just go to my basement. I eat dinner, I bathe the kids, and then I go down to the basement. Like, the commute's better than driving to Scarborough, I'll say that.
Well, we are all getting into new routines, and mine is biking on a stationary bike I bought for an hour, and I watch you guys, and I watch ESPN Get Up, and I'm a happy guy. By 7:30, I've biked for an hour, and I'm ready to go have a nap. But I want to ask you about coming through Regina for the podcast, because I was there, basement of the Connexus Arts Center. I don't think we've talked since. It was amazing. Cody Fajardo coming out, singing, bringing you guys pizza. Man, was that fun.
It was so funny, Rod, because one of our producers had just been to Regina for a week or so, and he'd been doing a story about the Rough Riders, and he came back, and he was obsessed with Regina pizza. He was obsessed with it. And he couldn't believe that this was a thing that existed. He didn't know about a true Canadian culinary tradition that I think if you're from Regina or from southern Saskatchewan, you just take for granted. But what you don't realize is that's a truly unique style of pizza that has been created in Regina. And it's so good. And Dan hadn't really tried it before. So to have Cody come bring the pizza out and to have us all try it was so much fun. And as you know, Rod, because I know you deal with him a lot, what a wonderful young man he is. Like, just a truly great kid, and just could have been happier with him. And I really, really hope that when we get the CFL going again and we get games back at Mosaic, that the fans really embrace, and specifically the PA person, the person in charge of playing the music, embraces every time he throws or runs for a touchdown, Cody Fajardo, that we play the "There is something in the air that night, the stars shine bright," Fajardo. Then I want the whole stadium to scream Fajardo. Just the concept of that. I remember, Rod, when Lito Shepherd used to play for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they would play Boss Skaggs' Lito Shuffle every time he would make a play. And, so you'd hear, "Oh, Lito," and then the whole crowd would go, "Oh." It was so great. It was so great. And that's what I always envisioned with this Fajardo thing. It was a huge success that night. As you know, you were there. So we're hoping it continues when the CFL season starts again. When that is, I'm not exactly sure. As you said earlier, we're getting Argos players asking why people hate the CFL so much. Boy, that's a can of worms when you're from Toronto.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, just on the Fajardo thing, I got guys across the league saying, is he as nice and as good a guy as it appears? I said he's even more nice. And I was worried that you guys might corrupt him that night, but he was only up there for like 5 minutes, so you couldn't rub off on him. That was a blessing.
Well, also, Rod, his dad was there, so we were on our best behavior.
Right.
We were on our best behavior. His dad brought him by. So, yeah, we just loved him, and I love that the provinces embraced him so much. And, this is a team that needs a star quarterback, I think. It can't be quarterback by committee. It can't be, all due respect to Zach Collaros, hey, he just won a Grey Cup, but, it's an injury thing, and it's in and it's out. And for Cody, I just think he's young and he's got his whole career ahead of him, and it's so exciting for Rider fans, I think, to have a guy like this to cheer for. And I know he just signed an extension too, so future is very bright for him and the Riders, that's for sure.
So it would be a shame if there was no... I mean, the CFL will come back, but we don't know when. But you got Cody there. You got Nick Arbuckle in Ottawa. You got Trevor Harris in Edmonton. Good young guys, young guns. Masoli down the road. Dane Evans. The CFL's ready for an explosion. And my next point for you is this Argos linebacker, Naka Sanyaka, saying this morning, why do Canadians hate the CFL? He puts it on Twitter. I mean, you're in the epicenter of Toronto. What's your deal? Do you love it because you're a Western guy, or what's... the CFL?
Yeah,
what's your thoughts
on
that?
I'm like you, Rod. Like we grew up with the sport, right? So I was an Edmonton Eskimos season ticket holder, and I just love the sport, and I still love the sport. I think it's better than ever. It's amazing when you go back to Regina and tell people from Regina, yeah, it's struggling in Toronto. And I mean, put it this way, Rod. When we came back from LA, the Argos had a Jay and Dan day, like a Argos game was Jay and Dan day, and it happened to be a Riders game. The Riders were in town, and they didn't even sell that out. Like even the Rider, the people from Saskatchewan who moved to Toronto, usually they would fill the place, but I'm not sure what it is, Rod. It's so confusing to me because they finally have a beautiful stadium. They're playing where TFC plays at BMO Field. It is perfect for CFL football. It is easy to get to. It's not far from downtown. It's just part of the problem with Toronto is there's too much going on in the summer. And then half the city takes off to their cabins too. So it's just a tough sell here. And I don't know what's going to turn it around. I really don't. I used to think all it needs is that one person. Not so much players on the field, but that, incredible business/sports mind that could turn it around for us. And I just don't know if that's ever going to happen. So I tend to not worry about it too much. I'm more excited, more encouraged about the fact that we might finally get a team in Atlantic Canada. I think that's so important for the league, that team does come to fruition at some point very soon, because not only will you get the 10 teams, but I think that fan base will embrace that team the same way that Saskatchewan has embraced the Riders. So I think that to me is more important than the Argos situation right now.
So do I. And we got one of those owners of the Schooners coming up later, Gary Drummond, on the program in hour 2. I'm going to read you a question, if you don't mind, from a viewer. He says, Jay, can you please tell us about your experience in the U.S. versus your show in Canada? Can you talk about the difference between the Jay and Dan's south of the 49 and north of the 49?
Well, my current situation where Jay and Dan is me and my iPhone and a tripod, it's a lot different. Because when we first went to LA, I think there were 50 people in the studio, and we had old guys from the old days of the Fox lot, like guys who'd worked on Love Boat and things like that, who who were union guys who just got assigned to our show, and their only jobs were to move chairs from one side of the studio to the other, like it was a heavily unionized Hollywood studio lot. So we just had so many people working on the show. I used to laugh. Like, we always told a joke. One of our best friends there, who's one of those guys, they call him a grip. And we'd see him at the beginning of the night. And his name was Jim Pearl, but a 65-year-old handsome Hollywood type. And we'd say, "Hi, Jim." And then 3 hours later, the show would be over, and I would not have seen Jim the whole time. And then I'd say, "Jim, where were you?" He was like, "I was in the parking garage smoking a joint the whole time." I was like, "That's great. You know, if that's working for you, that's great." So that's a big. That's not happening at TSN, Rod, because
okay.
We are. I realize everything's legal now, but everything's so bare bones now. You know, with Canadian television, it's we've had so many layoffs. All jokes aside, it's been terrible. This coronavirus self-isolation thing has been so bad for our business. From a perspective of freelancers, a lot of the guys who work with us, as you know, are freelancers, and we've got a few of them from Saskatchewan, good friends of ours, who work on all the live events, all the CFL games, the Brier, what have you, Scotties. Those guys are all freelancers, and as soon as this self-isolation hit, and as soon as the cutbacks happened, those guys were out of work, and they're still out of work. So we're lucky, Dan and myself, to still have a show on the air. And so, it's almost like we're back in broadcasting school. We're setting up our own camera, our own lighting, our own everything. My wife's doing my makeup. It's all hands on deck, Rod, but it's working out. So we're happy to do it because we know we're fortunate to be able to do it.
Yeah, but our industry's just been gutted before the pandemic. Now it's like a scorched earth. I'm talking sports and entertainment. It's horrible, but I understand we're not the only ones, but you nailed it when you said we are very lucky, and we know that we're very lucky. Nelson, just one more point. Nelson Hakowicz writes in, he says, "I watched Fox Sports 1. It feels like they had the clamps on their creativity. Be that as it may, I just wanted to read it to you. The one thing from your podcast, and I'm going to tell all our viewers, if Jay and Dan come to your community, go. Buy a ticket and go. But the one thing that I missed was that producer guy that kind of looked like Mutt Lang that you brought on from L.A. live on FaceTime. What was his deal? I just kind of missed the introduction. He was hilarious, but... yeah, why are you so...
That's Engineer Jim, Rod. He is a unique character. When we got to L.A., we needed someone to work the boards for us for our podcast, and the guy who hired us said, "I think you should use this guy." So he was a sound editor. If you watch NFL on Fox and you hear all that amazing audio and all the great clips they play, he's the guy who marries the sound to those clips. But in his past life, 20 plus years ago, he was a record producer in Hollywood, and he is, if you Use Your Illusion 1 or 2 by Guns N' Roses, and you own it on LP, and open up the LP jacket, he is in that album. Pictures of him are on that album. So he worked with Guns N' Roses for years and has worked with tons of people. So he would come on the podcast with us and just tell stories. We called it 6 Degrees of Engineer Jim, where we try to trace his career back to another artist that we liked. And so we've remained friends with him ever since, and he's just the loveliest guy, and he would chug margaritas on demand at the live podcast. So how can you go wrong with a guy who will chug margaritas on demand?
You can't. Well, Jay, I could go on all day, but we'll let you go. I'll just say, so proud to support everything you guys do. You're such great guys. Keep it up. Appreciate it, and I hope you get on my TV soon.
Rod, I can't tell you how much I love coming on with you. I love what you're doing. And I always appreciate your support. And I apologize. I hope my audio is okay. I had a better setup going, but anyway. Oh, here. I'll leave you with this. Like this is a painting of Keith Richards my mom did. There it is.
Thank you. Good night. Look at that. Keith Richards.
That's awesome.
He has survived this, from what I understand. If there's one guy that should be vulnerable to the pandemic, it would be Keith Richards.
You would think.
Man, that's funny.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.